Hi, I'm James with the 1hoursmarthome.com, and today we're going to go through the Nest wiring diagram, what all these different connections mean, and explain to you how your thermostat works and how all these wires go together. So even if you don't have a typical system, you're going to be able to figure out what you need to do for your Nest thermostat to get it connected. So the basic operation of a thermostat is that you've got power coming from the HVAC unit that goes to the thermostat, and then when the thermostat detects a temperature that is too high or too low or out of range, it will then turn on and it completes a connection that then goes back to the control board inside the furnace, and that power signals the control board to start up either your AC or your furnace. So that's kind of the basic rundown of how a thermostat works and how an HVAC system works. So we're just going to start over here, and we'll go around and explain each one of these terminals. So this is a Nest Gen 3, also works for a Nest Gen 2 thermostat, or the most current Nest thermostat design, excluding the Nest E. There's a few less terminals on the Nest E. We'll do another video on the Nest E so you can understand that as well. But the Nest Gen 3 is like the most common thermostat out there, and Nest Gen 2, it's the one with, you can get it with a white dial on it, a stainless steel dial, a couple different colors. But I've got one in my home. A lot of people like these. A lot of people have them installed. But some people get intimidated in the process because they don't understand all the wiring, or they take it off and they're like, what should you do? So the first step in installing a Nest thermostat is when you remove the old thermostat, or you take the cover off the old one, take a picture. That's very important. Do that before you get started. But even if you didn't take a picture, we'll help you out and show you a little trick that you can use to figure it out. So over here, we've got Y1 and Y2. So in a typical 4-wire system, you would actually only have this Y1 connected. And what Y is heating, or is cooling. So it's air conditioning. And Y1 and Y2, the difference is if you've got two-stage air conditioning or two-stage cooling. So most people just have single-stage cooling. If you had on your old thermostat a Y1 and a Y2 connected, that would mean that you had two-stage cooling. And what two-stage cooling is, it's really just a high and a low for your air conditioning compressor. So W1, that is just single-stage cooling, or the low power mode, or the low mode of cooling, and Y2 would be the high mode of cooling. So some newer HVAC systems have that Y2 system, and that just allows you to get more efficiency out of your system. So you only run it in high when you really need it, and most of the time it's running low. But if you have a traditional HVAC system and you only have one wire, then the Y1 wire is just going to be standard cooling. It's always one speed for your HVAC system. Now, fan, that is the G wire. So the G wire typically is a green wire. And before we go on the Y1, Y2, it typically is a yellow wire, but it's not always a yellow wire. If your HVAC contractor is following the conventions that are standard for color combinations, they would have used a yellow wire for Y1, but not always the case. Some people don't do that. The fan wire, typically a G wire. And what that is a wire that allows you to control your fan even if you don't have your heating and cooling on. So some people like to circulate air throughout their house on a moderate day, or even in the wintertime, people use the G wire to circulate air. So even after you've got your furnace off and it's not generating heat, you're still circulating air. And what that can do is help equalize temperatures throughout your house that may be too hot or cold because you're circulating the air constantly. So the G wire allows you to run your fan, the blower motor, inside of your HVAC system without delivering heating or cooling. So you're not heating it up, you're not cooling it down, you're just circulating air throughout your house. We've got another video that shows you how you can use your G wire for a common wire. We'll put a link to that, or we'll link out to that in one of the cards here. But that shows you how you can use a G wire as a common wire if you are having low power issues with your Nest. Not a super common issue that you need a common wire for Nest, but it is relatively common. So sometimes you can use this as a common wire. Watch that other video if you're interested in knowing what that's about. The OB. So if you live in the upper Midwest, a cooler climate, you probably don't have this heat pump, or East Coast, Northeast Coast, you probably don't have this. But if you live in the South or a more moderate climate, you are gonna have this OB terminal. We're not gonna go too far into heat pumps because we're gonna have another video on heat pumps and heat pumps wiring for the Nest, because it's very specific how you need to do it with a heat pump. But the OB basically controls your heat pump and what's called a reversing valve. So the reversing valve allows your heat pump to either pump heat into your house or remove heat from your house. There's a lot of thermodynamics involved with heat pumps and everything, but basically a heat pump involves transferring heat from one area to another area. And the reversing valve, a heat pump doesn't have a burner in it typically. A heat pump system just has a compressor and a condenser, and by this reversing valve being energized or de-energized, it allows the system to either heat your home or cool your home. And what the reversing valve does is reverse the flow in that system so that heat is going one way, or if you turn it on or off, heat goes the other way. It is a reversing valve. So heat pumps, if you want more information on that, we're gonna do another video on heat pump wire, because there's some other things that you need to know about the Nest with a heat pump. They do work good. It's just that you have to get it wired right so that you don't use too much energy and you get the efficiencies out of your heat pump and you understand what you're doing when you wire it up. The next one we've got here is the RC, and the RC and the RH are related. They are power. When we talked about a thermostat earlier and how it works and how an HVAC system works, basically RC and RH do the same thing for the most part in most systems. RC is power and RH is power. For most of you, you could hook up your red wire to either, which is the R wire typically, to the either power here or power here. It doesn't matter for most people, with the exception being if you have a dual fuel system. And a dual fuel system would be somebody that has a air conditioner, actually an air conditioner and a boiler. So maybe you've got an air conditioner that circulates air throughout your house and gives you air conditioning in the summertime, and then you've got a boiler that provides heat in the wintertime. And that would be what we call a dual fuel system. There's some other ways that you can get a dual fuel system, other types of dual fuel system, but for most of you, it's not gonna be a thing that you have to worry about. That R wire could go in either the RC or RH. It's independent. What you're doing is just powering the thermostat. That is what the R wire does. It powers the thermostat. But technically, the RC stands for power from cooling, and the RH stands for power from heating. So you could have power from your cooling and you could have power from your heating. So you could have power from the air conditioner, and in RH you could have power from the boiler if you had that dual fuel system that we were talking about. But for like 95% of you, it doesn't matter. You could put your power wire in either one of these and it won't cause any issues. And when you're taking off your old thermostat, you'll probably notice that RC and RH are like one terminal. It'll be RC, RH, and there'll be a slash mark, or there'll be a jumper between the two terminals, because they basically consider them the same thing most of the time. So just something to know. So RC and RH are for the most part the same. So when we jump over to RH, all that is power from heating. Like I said, you can put your R wire, your red wire, your power wire in either one of these if you've got a standard just HVAC system. Don't worry about it too much. The star terminal. Now the star terminal is used for accessories. So it's used for things like a humidifier or dehumidifier, and there's probably some other accessories that are out there that you could put on your HVAC system. But the star terminal is used for a humidifier. So if you want to have a humidifier connected to your Nest, you have to wire it a very specific way. We'll go through a video on that. We'll do a little diagram of how that works. But basically, how the Nest has to work with a humidifier is that you have on your system a little humidifier. Let's say this is the furnace over here, and this is your humidifier right here. You need to have a wire that comes from this humidifier terminal okay, that is energized, and that energy terminal, so this is 24 volts. So what happens is when there's a call for humidity on the thermostat, power would go through this RH or RC wire, and then it goes through the thermostat. The thermostat says you need humidity because it detects the humidity is too low, and then that power would go back down through the humidifier terminal, and it would come over here. So you're providing 24 volts AC to the humidifier, and then from the humidifier, you're going to have another wire that goes down to your C terminal on your furnace board. Your furnace control board. And what that does is that when 24 volts comes from the Nest through your humidifier terminal, it will turn on your humidifier because it's got a path for return current down to the C terminal in your furnace control board, and it will turn on your humidifier or dehumidifier if that's how you have it set up. So we'll put another video on wiring a humidifier and very specific instructions for that because there's a little bit of a trick to it in how you wire up your humidifier. And a lot of the ways that humidifiers are traditionally wired aren't going to work for how you need to have them set up for the Nest. So the common wire, the C wire. What is a C wire? We got a whole video. We got multiple videos on the common wire. But a common wire basically allows your Nest thermostat to charge even while you're not providing heating or cooling. So a Nest has a small internal battery in it, and in order to have Wi-Fi and do all the other smart things that a Nest does, that battery needs to stay to a certain level of charge to communicate with your system and do what it needs to do. So typically, in a lot of ways, how the Nest charges itself, it allows power to come in through here, and then it goes through the battery, and there's an electric circuit, and then it has just a small amount of power, electrical current going out through your air conditioner terminal, but not enough to turn the air conditioner on. And sometimes people don't have enough power getting through, and that's when you have low battery and issues with your Nest, and then you have to add a common wire. Or the other problem that you can have is that the Nest, the power goes through here, it goes through your thermostat, and it goes out through your AC to create a charging circuit, and it turns on your AC and you get short cycling. And that's another issue that causes you to need a common wire. Not all people need a common wire. There's some stats on the Nest website in terms of how many people, what percentage need a common wire. I think it's like 10 or 20%. I don't need a common wire for my house, but we've got videos on how to install them. A common wire allows power to constantly be circulating through the Nest, charging the battery so you get good performance without going through the air conditioner terminal and potentially causing short cycling or not providing enough power because of how throttled it needs to be so that it doesn't turn on your AC and it doesn't cause that short cycling issue. So not everybody needs a common wire, but some of you do, and that's why we created a common wire tutorial, or several of them, on how you can add a common wire. You can add a common wire. We've got one that shows you how to do it by using your G-wire, but then you lose your fan control. We've got another one that shows you how to connect a common wire, just adding another wire, which is a pretty complicated process. If your thermostat's not close, you got to run wires through walls and all that kind of stuff. And then we show you another one on probably the simplest way to add a common wire, which is using a common wire transformer. And that's basically just plug something in, you wire it up to your Nest, and you're good to go. You're providing power to the thermostat. So a couple different ways. It's not required, and that's a huge advantage for most people with a Nest thermostat. You can do a Nest thermostat with only 4 wires. You can actually do a Nest thermostat with only 2 wires if you wanted. But the big advantage is you don't have to have a common wire most of the time. Now, some of you do have to have a common wire, so I probably beat that to death. All right, the next ones we've got here are heat. You've got W1 and W2. This is just like the air conditioning side over here. W1 and W2, except it's much more common to have 2-stage heating than it is to have 2-stage cooling. And the W wires are just heat. So W1 is 1-stage heating, W2 is 2-stage heating. And if you have a heat pump, it's potential that Your W2 is your auxiliary heat. We'll get into that in another video. But W1, basically for most people, if you have just regular heating and cooling system, you've only got like 4 wires to your thermostat, you're gonna just have W1, Y1, G, and power connected, RC or RH, it doesn't really matter. W1 is just regular heating for most people. There's no single stage or second stage, it's just one continuous heating cycle and level of heating. It's your burner's on and the fan blows. If you've got a newer system or system that has some more features, you might have 2-stage heating. And what 2-stage heating does is you've got a low power for heating and a high power for heating. You're burning more fuel in the high power W2 2-stage heating. And what that is, if your house is really cold, it lets your house get really warm really quick. With 2-stage heat, it'll put this all the way up to high power, blow a ton of warm air throughout the house, and you'll heat up quicker than you would if you had just the W1. And so just like the 2-stage air conditioning, 2-stage heat is designed with energy efficiency in mind so that you could let your house get cooler when you're away and then just let it turn up the heat real quick on that 2-stage heating, burn a lot of fuel real quick, heat it up, and then drop back down to that W1 once you've already got some of the ambient temperatures up a little bit within your house. And it would go back to the more economical single-stage heat. So for most of you, the most common wiring, like I said, is going to be just 4 wires, okay? 4 wires. And you're going to have W1, Y1, we'll just say RH, and G. And that's a just typical HVAC system. So you got W1, Y1, G, your fan, and power, which could be either one of these. Now, if you're lucky and you had a common wire, an extra wire in your HVAC system, you could have Y1, W1, C, RC, and G. And what you're going to have there is just, you're always going to have constant power for your Nest. A lot of people don't need it, but some people do, and some people have that extra wire if you had 5 wires. But you got to make sure that this common wire is connected inside of your furnace. This C wire at the Nest also has to be connected to the C terminal back in your furnace. Now, let's say you had a 7-wire system. What would that look like? Well, maybe you've got a system that has 2-stage heating and 2-stage cooling. And then you would have a W1 wire, a W2 wire, so heating 1 stage, heating 2nd stage. You'd probably have a C wire for that common wire for power, so you got 3 wires there. You're going to have your power wire, so we'll just say RH, okay? So now you got 4 wires. You've got your fan for independent fan control, and then that's 5 wires, and then you've got Y1 and Y2 for 2-stage cooling. And that's like a lot of the very new HVAC systems, or you're getting something replaced. Maybe you're getting something that has all these features, which is just a nice way to save energy with your system. So that would be a 7-wire system for the Nest thermostat. Now, what would a 2-wire, I said a 2-wire Nest thermostat could work. And it does in a lot of cases, and there's a couple specific cases that it works for. Let's say you have a boiler and you want to add a Nest thermostat to it. You can do that most of the time because they do put out enough power. So for a boiler, all you would have is your RH, your heat, your power coming in from the boiler, and you're going to have W1 heating. And when the thermostat detects that you need to turn on the boiler, it will complete this circuit and W1 will work. And there you go, your boiler will work. The other place that you have it is some people only have heat. They don't have air conditioning. If you live in a northern climate where it's not too humid or you get moderate temperatures, you may only have a heat furnace. And in that case, you may have 2 wires or you may have 3, because in modern furnaces, the blower motor will automatically turn on whenever there is a call for heating or whenever there's a call for cooling. So you don't necessarily need this G wire. You would just lose out on blowing air around without your heat on, but you could have 2 or 3 wires with a system where you just have a furnace and no air conditioner. So you would have, for a 2-wire system, you'd have RH again, and then you'd have W1 for heating from your furnace. Or if you had the 3 wires, you would have a RH wire, a W1 wire, and a G wire. So you could still circulate the air inside of your house without having the heating on. So we hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe to this video. We've got all this explained. Check out our other videos on Nest Common Wire, Nest wiring diagrams, and all that stuff if you want to learn more about how your Nest smart thermostat works, or just any smart thermostat works. These conventions for wiring, for the most part, are the same for all thermostats. Okay, so Y1, W1, Y2, W2, G, C, R, OB, are all standard conventions. The star terminal is kind of a little bit of a non-standard convention, but it generally represents accessories to your heating and cooling system. So these wiring diagrams and this explanation of what the wires are for your Nest thermostat is also valid for other heating and cooling systems. So once again, please like and subscribe to this video. Thank you for watching. You can support us by clicking on any links below, going to our website, onehoursmarthome.com, or liking this video, clicking on the links, and we appreciate you. Thank you.